Dial H number 2, written by China Maiville, art by Mateus Santaluco. This is dense and confusing, but also very good, so I'm going to try my best here. So we open up with Nelson, who is just constantly using the dial to change into different heroes, and we see him change into Human Virus, Shamanticore, Pelican Army, Double Bluff, Hole Punch, and finally one called Skeet, as he uses Skeet to go and break up a robbery, and all the cops are like, yeah, thanks, Skeet. And Skeet's whole thing is that he's literally like, you shoot him, he shatters, and then he reforms himself, and then he just flies away. And the cops are like, awesome! But then he has to turn back into Nelson. He's like, man, being Nelson sucks. But he's able to remember everything that happens when he's a hero. So there's that. So he goes and visits his friend over in the hospital, the one who got beat up, and the friend is like, look, here's the thing. I'm part of like this gang or whatever, and our thing is that whenever somebody dies, whenever there's like an old woman who dies or whatever, we just break into their house before the family can come, and we steal their stuff, and we get like documents or whatever. And I don't know, my direct boss is Vernon, but he has a boss named XN, and I don't know nothing about that. So they say like, well, okay, well, why do you need all those people to break into an apartment? And apparently it's because they kept on getting interrupted by some superhero. So there's that as a clue. But anyway, Nelson goes home and he just tries to, he wants to talk to somebody about what's going on, literally anybody. So he calls up his ex, and her name's Julie, and tries to have a conversation, but Julie's just like, nah, I'm not doing this, Nelson, bye, click. And we see that Nelson just goes through like 15 packs of cigarettes all in one dish, and he finally puts down, he's like, all right, screw this, I'm going to have to be a superhero. And he turns into a hero called Control-Alt-Delete, which is just a staticky looking body with a computer monitor for a head. And he goes and he's trying to get to this woman's apartment that they were supposed to break into, just looking for clues. And when he gets there, he sees this cloaked figure break out, and they start fighting each other. The cloaked figure clearly knows more about their powers than Nelson knows about his. But he's like, wait a minute, hold on, I'm Control-Delete. I'm gonna reboot. And he clicks on he like pushes his hand, and then all of a sudden something happens where he like unshatters the screen on his face because the person had shattered it. But then the person that they were fighting just turns back into a normal person. They don't have any powers anymore. And we see that it's this woman who then just runs her way out. And Nelson's like, yeah, that's right, you better run. Watch out for the power of Control-Alt-Delete. And then as soon as she's like, so I was like, oh, geez. that was too much. So he changes back into Nelson, and he's actually glad to change back. He didn't really want to be that hero anymore, but he says he's got to get out before the crew comes back and sees what's going on in the apartment. Then we get a page that I genuinely cannot break down. I'm not sure what's going on, but it's just someone on the phone talking about how they keep on being interrupted by superheroes. Now there are two of them, and there's this figure who was like locked up in handcuffs, who then breaks their way out of the handcuffs and then grabs the person on the phone saying like, I want you to know that you have never been a threat to me. And he keeps on saying ex nihilo, which I believe is the XN, but I don't know if like they're saying ex nihilo is the name of this person that they're talking to, or if it's their own name, or if it's just some concept. I think it's the person that they're talking to, so I don't know. Regardless, he's able to like create poisons and inks and stuff out of his hands, and he can also make the antidotes for those poisons and whatnot. So he ends up spraying this guy in the face with some poison and then just walking out. So then we see Nelson, who is just kind of, he's frustrated. He's just trying to figure out what in the hell is all going on here, who that person was, what they're trying to do. And we see throughout this entire thing that the one who attacked the person with the poison is scaling his way up the hospital and is breaking into his friend's room. Darren is his name. Breaking into Darren's room. And so Nelson tries calling the hospital, trying to talk to Darren, get some more information. And as he does so, this is while he's being assassinated. So the nurses can't actually get into the room as Darren is being killed. So Nelson makes his way to the phone booth, and he turns into the Iron Snail, who's just this like big hefty dude with this giant looking snail shell like tank on his back. And he breaks into the the what's it called, the gangster's place. He breaks into there and he just starts attacking them, and he just unloads on all of the gangsters who are there. And as it's continuing onwards, they realize like, hey, are you with the dude who messed with my head and made me all sad? And he's like, sorry, Captain Lacrimose isn't in right now. Can I take a message? So he's making quick work to the gangsters, but then the dude who assassinated Darren comes down, and he's like, of course, you make a fine enemy, but you're slower and not quite as bright as me, so I will always have the upper hand. And he sprays Iron Snail with some poison or whatever in his face, but I guess Iron Snail is not affected by the poison, and the guy wasn't expecting that, so he just punches the guy in the stomach, and they have to, Nelson has to retreat because each transformation comes with a limited amount of time, and he's managed to figure out, like, oh, my time is almost up on this one, gotta go. And he's literally running away as he de-transforms. And apparently he just hails a cab at some point. So then the assassin breaks his way up into the hospital again and starts talking to this woman who's on the phone with someone who's, like, noticed that Nelson just hopped into a cab. So whoever this woman may be, she has red hair, who the woman who was depowered by Control Alt Delete also has. Again, this is a confusing book and very hard to recap, but regardless, clearly they have some sort of agreement, despite the fact that the woman is very much not wanting to work with this assassin. So anyway, Nelson makes his way back to the phone booth, and he's like, oh, I gotta get changed again so I can go back there and avenge Darren. But then we see that the woman who he fought before is standing on top of the phone booth, and she's like, hey, look, I fought you before because I thought you were with the gangsters or whatever. I know now that you're not, and I know you're using this phone booth. I have more answers. I know you want answers. You have to come with me. And we got to go now because we are both being hunted. And we see just down the street are the gangsters that Nelson was attacking. And that's it. It makes sense when I read it. Like, I gather the events and stuff like that, but there's just enough details left out that trying to explain any given part of it without you seeing what is going on is nearly impossible, which makes it very hard for me to do this show. But regardless, I like it. I like the stuff it's setting up. It's still doing creative heroes. I mean, just in this one issue alone, we got like 6, even if most of them are all just one panel, like, who cares? But I like how it's setting up this mystery with a bunch of different sides playing. It's all very confusing on what's going on. But it feels like we're in Nelson's place. Like, we know what he knows. At any point, we are aware of what he's aware of. So I feel like that's, despite the fact that we do get the third person omniscient of us being able to, like, see what the gangsters are doing at certain points and stuff like that, we don't really know that much more than what Nelson knows. We're just given slight little snippets more, but it's not that much. So overall, I'm going to give this a 7. I think it's good. Not great territory, but I am enjoying it. And art-wise, it is by far the most unique book being put out in the entire DC line. So definitely liking that. But yeah, just a 7 for this right now. We'll see if it improves or, gets worse over the course of the rest of this book.